Hello learners and welcome. In this video we are going to do Integrated Science paper 2 and I hope that you are going to learn. Now let us begin. Question 1. I'm going to read the questions and then we are going to see the correct answer and see why the other options are not correct where we have multiple choice questions, and also explain the correct answers where we are supposed to give our own explanations. Now question 1. Let us start with task 1, which has 15 marks. A group of grade 9 learners set up an experiment to investigate the properties of water samples collected from different sources in their sub-county. They were provided with solution Y, which is a liquid reagent, and 4 unknown water samples, which are KL, M, and N. So those are the water samples. The learners added equal amounts of solution Y to each sample, cocked the boiling tubes, and shook them vigorously for 30 seconds. Their observations are recorded in the table below. And then so you can see there we have the water sample and the observation in that table. And then A says that complete the table by identifying the type of water. Is it hard water or soft water? So we are going to start by completing this table, and we will start with sample K. Sample K says what was the observation in sample K first of all. Sample K, when it was mixed with reagent Y, there was a rich, thick lather formed, which formed immediately. A rich, thick lather formed immediately. So what does that mean? That means it is soft water, you see, because there was a rich, thick lather which formed immediately. That is soft water. And then the second one, there was grayish white curds or scum formed and there were no bubbles. That is hard water, especially because there were no bubbles. And then solution M formed lather after a very long time of shaking. So because it took a long time of shaking, that is hard water. And then sample N, persistent form or lather formed easily. Soft water, you see. So one of the things that you should remember when it comes to hard water and soft water is that soft water surges soon and hard water is hard to lather, you see. So those will help you to answer any questions related with hard and soft water. And there, when there is soon surging, that is soft water, but when it is so hard to lather, that is hard water. Then B says, identify the likely solution Y used in this practical. This is mostly a soap solution. Why? Because soap produces lather in soft water but forms scum with hard water, and these are the elements that we are seeing in our water. So that was a soap solution. And then C says that based on the observations, which sample would require the most amount of soap to wash clothes effectively? And then you are told to give a reason. The correct answer here is sample L. Why? Because it formed scum and no bubbles, showing that it is very hard water. It dissolved calcium and magnesium ions that react with soap, so more soap is needed before lather forms, you see. So it was sample L. It is very hard water. Then let us go to question D, and D says that a learner suggested that sample L could be made soft by boiling. And then one says that name the specific type of hardness that can be removed by boiling. Now, the hardness that can be removed by boiling is the temporary hardness. Temporary hardness can be easily terminated by boiling. And then question D2 says that name one chemical substance responsible for the type of hardness mentioned in one above. Now, one substance causing temporary hardness, you are supposed to name it. One of it I'll give you, it is calcium hydrogen carbonate. Calcium hydrogen carbonate is one of those substances that cause temporary hardness, and it can be easily removed by boiling. And then E says that state 2 disadvantages of using sample L, hard water, for domestic purposes. So when we use hard water for domestic purposes, which are the disadvantages? You see, the disadvantage is that it wastes soap because it forms scum instead of lather. Number 2, it forms scale deposits in kettles, boilers, pipes and heaters. Other disadvantages include that it leaves clothes dark or stained after washing. So using it for domestic purposes can damage appliances and materials that we use at home. And then let us go to question F. Question F says that study the apparatus setup required for this experiment and name them. Now, number 1, the vessel used to hold the water samples. So the vessel used to hold the water samples is called a boiling tube. It is called a boiling tube because if you need to boil it, you just boil it using that boiling tube. Then number 2, the instrument used to measure exactly 5 centimeters cubed of the water samples. Now that is a measuring cylinder. A 5 centimeters cubed pipette may also be accepted because it measures the volume more accurately. So you can either say a measuring cylinder or a pipette. Then question G, why is it important to avoid tasting any of the water samples provided in the laboratory? So when you're in the lab and you're provided water, why learners should not taste the samples? You're supposed to give a reason. And the reason is because the samples may contain harmful microorganisms or toxic chemicals or any other contaminants that can cause poisoning or illness. So one laboratory rule that is very important is that never taste an unknown substance, because there are many substances in the lab and that water could contain any of them and it could cause poisoning. And with that, we are done with task 1 and now we are ready to go to task 2. So task 2, we are going to talk about task 1. First of all, it was just one question with all those sub-questions. And then now task 2 also has 15 marks. So it is the last part and it has 15 marks. So this question is mostly about ecosystem. And let us see what it says. It says that during a nature walk at a local park, learners observed various components of an ecosystem. They saw maize plants, grasshoppers, frogs, and snakes. They also noted the presence of soil, sunlight, and a small pond. From the list above, identify 2 samples for each category. Number 1, producers. Now, you are supposed to identify the producers. Remember that a producer makes its own food through photosynthesis. So these are mostly plants. Plants are the ones that make food on their own through photosynthesis. So in this case, the correct option is maize plant, because a maize plant is a producer because it is a plant that makes its own food, you see. And then photosynthesis is an important correction is that the question asks for 2 producers, but only one producer, which is the maize plant, is provided in the list. So a second valid producer would be maybe glass or algae, but neither is listed. Now, a scientifically correct response may therefore be maize plants, algae in the pond, if the examiner allows you to assume that if there was a pond, there was maybe algae, or maybe there was grass around. So you can say maize plant, grass, algae, whichever, but it has to be a plant. And then question B, first of all, A2 says that are abiotic factors. Now, abiotic factors, you can say any 2, and I would say soil and sunlight, you see, because the small pond or water is also an acceptable abiotic factor. And in this question, the 2 I would mention include soil and sunlight. However, a small pond or water is also an acceptable abiotic factor, you see. What is an abiotic factor? To help you always remember is that an abiotic factor is not alive. It is not a living organism. Plants are considered to be living organisms. Animals are considered to be living organisms, but abiotic factors are not living organisms like sunlight and water, you see. and soil. So those are the correct options for that, option 2. And then let us go to B. B says, construct a food chain using all the 4 organisms observed by the learner. Now, here you are supposed to have a box, and you are supposed to start with a maize plant. Why? Because it is the producer. So first of all, food chain, we start with the producer, we go to the primary consumer, we go to the secondary consumer, and then the tertiary consumer. And always remember that the arrow should show the direction of energy flow. So we are supposed to start with the maize plant, and then an arrow which is going to grasshopper, the primary consumer, and then another arrow which goes to frog, which is the secondary consumer, and then an arrow going to snake, which is the tertiary consumer, because the snake eats the frog eats the grasshopper eats the maize plant. That is how the food chain should look like. And then question C, predict what would happen to the population of grasshoppers if all the frogs were killed by a pesticide. A very interesting question here. The effect of killing all frogs. First of all, the grasshopper population would increase because frogs would no longer eat them. And then the increased grasshopper population may then cause a greater damage to the maize plants. So always remember that fewer predators leads to more prey, you see. So whatever is eating the other, if it is reduced, that means that the predator is going the prey is going to increase. Why? Because the predator has been reduced. And then question D, environmental impact. The learners noticed plastic waste floating in the small pond. Name the type of environmental pollution observed. Now, this is called a water pollution. Why? Because plastic waste is contaminating the pond. That is called water pollution. And then D2, that was D1. D2 says, suggest 2 ways the local community can manage plastic waste to protect the ecosystem. Now, to protect the ecosystem, number 1, they should collect and recycle or reuse the plastic materials. They can also provide proper waste bins and ensure plastics are collected and disposed of safely. Other acceptable responses include community cleanups and reducing single-use plastics. You see, they can be either banned or reduced in the area. So always remember that when it comes to environmental conservation, you should talk about things of reducing waste, reusing it, or recycling. Those are the terms to use when it comes to ecosystem conservation. And then question E. Question E says, list 2 pieces of equipment the learner should have carried to effectively record their findings during the nature walk. So, this is very easy and very simple. You are supposed to record. So, if you are recording, you are supposed to have a notebook, because that is where you will write. Then you are also supposed to have a pen or a pencil, you see. You can also include, those are the basic ones, a pen or a pencil and a notebook. You can also include a camera, you see, for taking pictures and videos, a phone or field data sheet, you see. All these are accepted as long as it is something that can help with the recording. And then question F, the last one, it says, state 2 rules of conduct that learners must observe to ensure they do not disturb the natural habitat during the study. So rules of conduct, I will state them. Do not damage, uproot or correct plants unnecessarily. Do not disturb, chase, capture or kill animals. And then do not litter. And then keep the noise low, so do not make noise. And then follow the designated paths. Then also do not contaminate the ponds. Ensure that you do not throw anything that is contaminated to the water. So another thing is that the student should look, record, and leave the habitat unchanged. You should leave it the way you found it as much as possible. Those are the rules of conduct. And with that, we are done with integrated paper 2. I hope that you have learned. Make sure that you turn on the notification bell, subscribe and turn on the notification bell to our channel, because we are going to have more papers more revisions to help you learn and to help you understand some of these questions that are repeated occasionally in your exams. All the best in your exams, and I hope that you keep learning and you keep growing. Bye.